Welcome to the Worth Listening podcast, where we focus on having positive and productive conversations around money. I'm your host, Lauren, a 4-time Olympian and certified financial planner. On this show, my guests share their money stories. Everyone has a unique story and experiences both wins and losses when it comes to money. My intent is to give listeners something they can relate to, something that builds their courage to be open and take control of their own money story. When I'm not creating a great show for my listeners, I'm running my company, Worth Winning, where I help individuals and families organize their finances. Check us out at worth-winning.com. All right, now on with the show. Hey, good people. Welcome back to the Worth Listening podcast. I just wanted to send you a quick reminder before we get started that if you are ready to take control of your financial future, then we have retreats for you. You're like, wait, what? A retreat for money? Yes, we're doing retreats for yoga, retreats for mental wellness, retreats for this and retreats for that. Why not a retreat for your money? So we are bringing a group to Medellín, Colombia, where I reside, and we will be getting together your personalized financial plan over the course of 7 days while you do the whole vacation thing as well. It's like time is valuable, so we got to mix the two things together. We don't have time to go on one vacation to learn, another vacation. We only get so many weeks off during the year, right? So if you're interested in enjoying great food, good company, and an incredible new culture, please, oh please, think about joining me in Medellín, Colombia, so that you don't have to feel stuck in your finances anymore. We can create some space for you to focus. Now, I do have to tell you that spots are limited. These are not retreats where 50, 60 people. We take 8. That is it. We do have retreats for couples. We take 4 couples. That is it. So if you want to get in, check out the dates. We've even got them going into 2026 at this point. And so there's that. I'm just going to put it out there for you. Now, let's get ready for the podcast. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to Royal, a licensed educator, travel entrepreneur, and the founder of Yep, She Travels, which I love the name of her business. Royal has visited 55 countries and currently lives in Medellín, Colombia, just like me. She curates groups for Black women and leads internship programs for HBCU students to experience life abroad. I love Royal. She is one of my really, really good friends here in Colombia. I'm so glad that we crossed paths. And I wanted to bring her on the podcast because I know a lot of people are starting to think more seriously about what it would be like to live in another country. So whether you're curious about like the logistics or you want to hear kind of the day-to-day life of someone who lives outside the US, I think Royal brings that fresh perspective and just like pretty a practical insight into what you need to be thinking about before you decide to flee the country. In our next episode, we will also be talking, Chloe and I, in our Know Better, Do Better series about financial planning pieces of the puzzle that you need to be thinking about before you flee the country. So in the episode today, we're going to talk a little bit about, the mixed messages about finances that Royal received moving abroad with very little and then just like figuring things out along the way. She talks about budgeting and visas and community and how she's built a lifestyle that just works for her. So without further ado, let you listen to Royal's story and see for yourself. Let's go. Royal, I'm so excited to have you on the show today. I mean, so many people are talking about fleeing the country. I was like, who better to have on my podcast at this point in time than my girl who's been here, there, and everywhere and doing the most as it relates to travel and fleeing the country. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lauren. It's so good to be here, and I can't wait to talk about, what it looks like to leave and flee. We both kind of have the same idea. That's how we met. So I already know that whatever I'll be talking about will resonate with you, but hopefully it will resonate with your audience as well.
Well, let's just start at the beginning. The audience doesn't know you like I know you, so we're just going to go all the way back, give them a little bit of context, and then bring them up to present day and how we fled the country. So,
yes.
Why don't you start by just telling us a little about where you're from, where'd you grow up, what were your parents' situation like? Like, did you have siblings? Who is Royal?
All of that. So, I'm from Southern California, from the Inland Empire, Riverside, San Bernardino area. If you don't know it, I usually tell people it's an hour outside of LA. I did also live in LA a little bit when I was a child, but I'm mostly from Riverside, San Bernardino area. I'm the oldest out of five. Yes, there's five of us. But I'm at the top, and then there's three boys, and then a girl rounds out the end.
Okay. So y'all roll deep. You don't want to mess with this crew because
And we're all R's. Our names all start with R's. Following that tradition from my mom and her siblings are R's, and then I think my grandmama's name is all L's, and that was just a tradition. And so it's a thing. If I have kids, will I continue the tradition? I'm not sure, but it's a nice one. All R's. And then from Southern California, my parents, I grew up in a two-parent household. They actually got divorced when I was 18, right when I was going to college.
wow. Do you think they held on? Like sometimes people do it for the kids. They're like, as soon as she's adult, like, but there was some more behind you. So
They're right. I don't know what the logic was. They probably should have not held on. There probably should only be, I think only one of us was planned. Out of all five, I was not planned at all. They probably should.
You usually think the first one is playing and then the rest are oops. You're like, no, there were some oopses and then one.
I was the oops baby. My mom actually, she was studying in Spain, and she had to come home basically because she obviously couldn't be abroad. But she had an Adventist, Seventh Day Adventist college, couldn't be abroad, and pregnant, so no, she had to come back.
Okay, so your mom had to return from Spain. Cause I'm like, back in the day, like, we're not old. We're on the upper side of the millennial. So our parents are like, I think like young boomers. I don't know how it works exactly, but long story short is back in that day, it was not okay to be at a 7 day Adventist school and pregnant.
Exactly.
And so she had to bring her butt back to America.
She did. But it all came full circle because I ended up going to the same exact school in Spain to study Spanish. So I guess, the circle had to be completed somehow. But yeah, so it was, 1990. It was very much still, you need to stay together, marry, do all the things. 5 kids later. And then when I was going to college, 18 years old, they got divorced. But just in general, as a family, we were always doing things. We're a very athletic family. We were in sports year round. We were always going on like little camping vacations and things like that. So it was fun.
What did your parents do for a living?
My dad's a physical therapist, and my mom's, when they were married, she was a teacher. Now she works in admin. But yeah, so because my mom had the summers off, we would take advantage and do things like that, or we would spend the summers with my grandparents and do things like that. So yeah, it was a pretty active childhood. We always did things. We always were doing things at church as well. Yeah.
How would you describe kind of like the money memories related to, like, would you say like you guys were a middle class family or?
Yeah.
Where did you fit in? Because I know the cost of living in California right now is like, woo.
Yeah, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. I have memories of maybe not being middle class at first, but I think it's because both my parents were students. They're both college students. So they went from, let's say working at McDonald's or working at the schools to being on programs and things like that, to then graduating from school and then getting your first paycheck. And my mom, I think, was a Teach for America student at first. But then while she was doing that, my dad was a physical therapist assistant. And apparently he was going to all the places that a lot of people didn't go. So very early on in his career, he was actually able to kind of rise us up to middle class. And so I would say that we were definitely solid. We were a solid middle class family. When you think about some of the activities that we did, I mean, I started skiing when I was 4 years old. So that's
middle upper, girl. But California is a little bit different too. You can get to that stuff easier.
Yeah, but I also think it's because of that's how my dad grew up. I would say he grew up upper middle class, but he grew up from like a Jamaican immigrant. My grandmother came here with nothing. And then my grandfather is from Galveston, and he was born to sharecroppers, right? And so they were able to work their way up being a physical therapist and then also a social worker. And they were able to give my dad and his siblings a really good life. And so my dad was trying to do the same thing with us, except I think my dad just didn't have the same money skills as his parents. And so while he was trying to do the things that he grew up with, because he was definitely upper middle class, it probably landed us more so in middle class.
I can respect that. I feel like people use the word generational wealth. They just throw it around now. Like, I'm trying to create generational wealth for my kids. And I think the main foundation of generational wealth is education. It's not the actual dollars and cents that you pass down, but if you don't have the education, you can end up making, like you said, decisions that don't allow you to really rise up and be wealthy. The wealth comes from the knowledge more so than it does from what giving your kids $1 million or something like that.
Exactly. And I think my dad's a really good example of that. He's the youngest out of four. And so I think he's also, because he was never, I'm guessing, people kind of take care of you as being the youngest, but then the eldest is the one, or even the second, you have to look after the other ones. And so I think there's a difference between when your birth order as well sometimes can help you determine how good you can be with finances and things that you know to pass on to other people.
They're like, I'm tired, child. I ain't got time to teach you nothing.
Yeah. And then that's a whole other story. But yeah, I would say we were solidly middle class for, I would say, most of my childhood.
And so how would you describe the way that you and your siblings, or, maybe you can't speak on behalf of your siblings, but like the memories of money that you had, or what you were taught about money? Was there a piggy bank or allowance or a bank account, or was it talked about in the household, or like things were just taken care of?
Yeah, that thing wasn't really talked about. I think, one side of my family is a lot, I would say, more cushioned than the other one. And the other side, my mom's side, middle class, but also they come from a background where you have to hustle more. It wasn't so comfortable. You have to undo certain habits. My grandmother was in a part of like the protests in Birmingham. And so those kind of community actions kind of stayed with her and also were passed along to my mom as well. And so the way that we were taught about money from even my mom and how was different than with my dad, because he didn't have to really go through that in the same way. And so I would say
because generational trauma is real as well.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, I saw some of the effects of even, hoarding on certain parts of my family and sides of my family because of their backgrounds. Even though, they had plenty, but they couldn't get out of the mindset. But I got a lot of mixed messages basically from money. And I would say mostly, sorry, to kind of like go back to the point, was a lot of my family, my mom's side of the family, they were very self-sufficient. It was like, well, I wasn't taught it. We just kind of knew. And so that was kind of passed down to, I think, us. And so when it comes to me, money, it was like, if I can't get money from my parents, I have to figure out a way to earn money. And so I started working whenever I could. As soon as I could work legally, even, I would start to work.
Okay, so what was your first job then?
The first job that I remember, I was a basketball referee and timekeeper. Yes. That was that was when I had my first like real money, like check.
Did you love it?
Yes, I did. And I was so happy. It was like, I think I got $5 each game. And I was so excited. I was so excited because anyways, we were an athletic family anyways. I was going to have to be at these games all day anyways. I was also playing. So I was like, okay, I'm 13 now. I can work. So I would get $5 a game. And then I tried refereeing, but I couldn't stand the parents yelling at me. They were so mean. So even though I could have gotten like $10 or $13 a game, I was like, no, I'd rather just do the score. It's easy.
You learned pretty early on. It's like some things are not worth the dollars. Like he's like, I can't do this to earn this money. I'm not about this life.
That's a really good point. And I think that's probably the lesson when it comes to me. It's like, I appreciate money. I don't value it. And so if I have to really break my back and even compromise who I am to get it, I'd rather not do it. I'd rather make less money and do what I enjoy than beat myself up for something.
Yeah, I am also in that boat. Everybody's a little bit different, but there's some things I'm just not going to do. My lifestyle is much more important, and yeah, my values and things like that. So, all right. So we're kind of 13, high school age. What was the talk around college? Was it like everybody in his family has to go to college? What do you want to be when you grow up? Was there a college fund? What was going to happen after you were like done being a minor?
So I did not know that college was optional. That's just the kind of family that I came up in. I came up in a family that really, really valued education and used education as a way to gain upward mobility. And so even for me right now, as I have a master's degree, I'm the least educated person out of anybody in my family that's my auntie or uncle, because they all have their doctors or PhDs, or they have 2 masters. My mom has a couple. She tried to get a PhD. So I guess my point is education in my family was so drilled into us that I didn't realize that not going to college wasn't an option. So we were prepared to go to college. I was obviously going to go to college. School, I wasn't bad at it at all, but it wasn't my favorite thing. So I thought to myself, I'm only going to just get a bachelor's because I'm going to, that's all I'll need. And I'll never do anything ever to get a master's or to continue my education because I don't like school. But that's probably because school was just always talked about and emphasized. And so you would think that if, the expectation to have everybody go to college is there, we would have some type of college fund.
But
no.
But no.
No. I remember one time as a teenager, we had somebody come over to the house, and I think it was an insurance lady. And I think my mom started a college fund maybe when I was like 15 or 16. So I think by the time I went to college, I might have had $1,000 or something like that. There was something that she was able to help me with my freshman year. But to be honest, there was never any talk about that because I don't think we were ever taught about savings. It was just somehow we were able to do stuff. Even if we probably couldn't afford to do stuff, we were able to do it. Specifically with education, my dad really wanted us to go to a Christian private education. And so I would say that all the money that was spent on our education, basically since I was in first grade until senior year, it was always in church school. And so I think all that money he could have been saving for college, it went to that because he believes so strongly in that type of education because that's also the education that he got. And so putting 5 kids in church school, it's expensive. So it was more like, hey, we'll get you to this point, but then after that, you're on your own.
It sounds similar to what a lot of people I think are doing now, where they're paying for like private school education, hoping that the private school education will give their children opportunities for scholarships or academic scholarships, things like that. Which, yeah, to your point, it's the same thing for me. It's like I didn't realize there was something else, like I could do nothing, or I could just, I'm 18, I'm done with high school. I just knew I had to go to college. And the path that I always thought I had to take was like academic scholarships. There was never a talk of like how I was going to pay for it other than being smart enough to get into the university, which I don't think I even had a full understanding of like how much it cost to go to a school or that you had to pay. It was just like, you need to be smart so you can go to college.
Right. So that was an active conversation that your family would have?
Yes.
Or you're saying that it just kind of just naturally fell into that?
It was always education. Like you can go places in life because you are educated, period.
Yep.
Yep. Didn't know where I was going or what I was doing, but I was like, this school thing is not a joke. It's not a game.
Yeah. That's exactly what it was. And I think with my parents, they got really lucky because most of us, we've been able to do well in school. So they didn't really have to sit us down and like, what are these grades or what are these or what's your next plan? At least with me, I was always the one who was like, okay, well, if I need something, I'm going to have to figure out how to get it. And if I need to get into school, this is what I need to do. These are the scholarships I need to apply for. This is who I need to talk to. And so I think also because maybe I would say I was kind of a go-getter, I think that kind of helped them be a little bit more lax with the rest of my siblings.
They're like, just do it like Royal did it. Like, don't come over here asking me any questions. Like,
No, truly. No, that's truly what it is. That honestly. But it's like, listen, not everybody's the same. My mom's a teacher, so she knows that.
Okay, so what school did you end up at? What were you majoring in? What was the goal? Did you take on a bunch of student loans, or was it like a little bit of loans and some scholarships? Like, what ended up happening?
So what ended up happening was I go to Oakwood University. It was Oakwood College at the time. It's a HBCU in Alabama, in Huntsville, Alabama. We are not very well known because it's a kind of a small school, but I think we're the only vegetarian HBCU, and we have a really big choir program.
Vegetarian HBCU?
Yes, vegetarian HBCU.
There was no meat on campus? Like, how?
No meats in the cafeteria. No. If you want to meat, you can maybe get some Chinese takeout. But apparently back in the day, that used to be illegal too. But by the time I got there, you could at least do Chinese takeout.
Wow. Like, I'm like, did she say vegetarian HBCU? I'm like, who puts food with the word HBCU? Like,
yes,
we are carnivorous HBCU. Like,
not Oakwood University. There was even a vegan section too. So,
wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm here for it.
So I went there. So I did well academically. So I was able to have a scholarship. I think the scholarship that I had paid for half at least. And then I was able to sign up for, I think I had a student work program I was able to do. Oh, wait, no, sorry. I'm mixing up boarding school because I went to boarding school and I worked off my bill for boarding school but that was high school. No, the question was loans. Yeah, so I had a mix of the timeline a bit. So I had half my scholarship, my scholarship paid off half my tuition. And then I was able to get loans. Unfortunately, because my dad and my parents' combined income was too much, the expected income.
Oh, for financial aid?
Yeah, it was a lot. But my dad was basically paying that for private school every year. So they had nothing to give. I mean, it was a substantial amount of money, but he was paying that for 5 kids at the time to go to school. And so my first year, they looked at me like, I don't know. You can take, I think it was what, 2,500 in subsidized loans, and unsubsidized, I think maybe my first quarter got 3,500. And then, yeah, it wasn't that much. I was actually supposed to go to University of Maryland because that was my dream school that I wanted to go to. But because I was out of state and I couldn't get the loans, I had to go to Oakwood where they were giving me the most money.
But what you're describing happens to so many people. And I'm sure there's a listener that's like, oh, girl, me too. Sometimes the way it looks on paper is not the way it actually is. Like, they're not taking into consideration that there's 5 children. They're not taking into consideration that you live in California, or, fill in the blank with XYZ thing. Our education system, as we all know, is very broken. And, while they put some thought into the processes, it doesn't really account for every particular financial situation. And so it's like, figure it out. And if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, of course, you know that I have expertise in student loans. So I see people all the time where actually they're parents that have come to me for help because they've taken on $300,000-$400,000 of student loan debt for their various children because they didn't qualify for anything. And it was like, well, my child wanted to go to school. I wanted them to have the opportunity to, go to fancy school XYZ, but there was no financial aid. And I'm looking at their income like, how did you not have any financial aid? But yeah.
Right. How could you not? And I'm looking back too, just thinking over the years, how did I not have a little bit more cushion? But I get some people have different priorities. They wanted to prioritize, secondary and primary school and not college. And, I was on my own and I get it. But if I had a choice, I probably would say, hey, put me in public school and let me be okay for college.
Right. Looking back on that, I might have done it a little differently.
Yeah, just a little differently. So, yeah, I ended up at Oakwood because of that. And what ended up happening was somehow I was able to clear financial aid and everything because a combination of loans and then my scholarship. And then because my parents got divorced, the next year when I was applying for FAFSA, I was actually able to apply under my mother. And so my mother at the time, she was a teacher, had significantly, less income than my dad, the physical therapist. And so because of that, that was the only way I was able to kind of continue throughout the journey with getting the loans and the financial aid and the Pell Grants and all that kind of stuff.
Right. It worked itself out, right?
It did, because also at the time I was working, but up until a certain age, you have to be claimed as a dependent a lot of the times. And so if it wasn't for that just turn of events and me being able to file under my mother, I don't know how I would have been able to, go abroad to Spain or do some other things. I even lost my scholarship at one point.
Life was over there, life then, right?
It was, but you know what it was though? I didn't realize I had ADHD at the time. And so I breezed through school, elementary school, high school, middle school, no problem, got good grades. But as soon as I got to college, I don't know what it was. Some of the classes they made us take were just horrible and boring. And I just wanted to, do my major, which was communications at the time and Spanish. And I just wanted to do that. And so I just found myself in some of these classes and just withering, just withering. And I found myself below a 3.0. And so they were like, oh, that sucks. We're taking away your scholarship.
You're like, sucks to be you. We have no control over the fact that you didn't do your work. So we're going to take this money back. What did you major in though?
Communications and Spanish.
Got it. And that's where you were like, some of this stuff is, these other classes are not working for me.
Yeah, there was like an art class I just didn't care. There was a couple other classes, a couple of other electives. I've never been good at math, so then having to take physics. But I've learned since then that that's really common with women with ADHD. It's that we usually do so well, and then we ended up just crashing out and burning in college. And we have no idea what's going on. And so we feel so badly about ourselves because it's me getting below a 3.0. That never happened in life, period. Even 3.5. So I'm like, what is going on? It was a weird adjustment, but thank God I was able to petition for my scholarship and I eventually got it back. But
amen for that, right? Yes.
Thank God. The Lord is good in His mercy.
So what ended up happening, like when you finished college, or maybe actually before we go to finishing college, like, did you experience like being at the university money differently? Like, were you seeing money through a different lens because now you're in a different environment, you're with other other students that come from different backgrounds? Was there something that stood out about your college experience and what you maybe learned about money during that time?
I learned about, I guess, for the first time, not really having, even though I always had like the hustle, I always wanted to have a job and have money. I also learned what happens when you can't rely on other people, such as relying on a scholarship, relying on my parents to be able to give for certain things. So that my relationships and money really changed because that was the first time when I was like, okay, I'm just going to do what I need to do to make sure that I'm okay. And even though I have this piece of paper that says I'm good, maybe I won't be good because I could lose the scholarship or, my parents are going through divorce, things are tight. So I got to make sure that I'm good. It's the first time that was in the forefront of my mind. And also that was the first time I thought, okay, well, because I'm strapped for cash and I'm working at McDonald's and I have all these things I want to do. I have an internship I need to get, to graduate. How am I going to do that? Am I going to be able to afford it? So thinking about things in that way made me go, okay, how can I do things the most efficient way, but also the cheapest way to get my goals done? And so that is what kind of college helped me with.
I mean, it sounds like it's like the unofficial introduction to an emergency fund, because what an emergency fund really is like that plan B for when stuff doesn't go quite as planned. And you realize like, hey, sometimes stuff is not going to go as planned. So let me make sure that I'm good to go.
Yeah, I would say so. That definitely happened. But also because I was 20, 21, I don't think I had that. It wasn't maybe phrased that way. It wasn't, maybe 6, 7, 8, 9 months down the line. It was maybe just a month because at the same time, I'm in college and I want to have a good time. I want to live life and I'm not looking that far ahead, to be honest.
I mean, because that's real. Like, the one thing I learned about myself looking back now at 41 is like 18, I was not an adult. 21, I was not an adult. 25 was the last thing you
Right.
could like finally rent a car. I was still not a grown up. Like I don't know why they just let us go off and be on our own at these ages, but I wasn't ready.
Right. We're just all trying to figure it out. And if you're not taught the way to do it in, a meaningful way or shown in a meaningful way, then we're just out here just winging it.
Winging it. And I know, like you said, there's some of us listening to this podcast in our 30s and 40s and still winging it. But don't worry, we're going to be better.
Very much
We
so.
are doing the best we can.
Right. That's why we need you, Lauren.
Right. All right. So what happened when you got out of college? Did we immediately find a job? Did you already have this whole life plan set up? Did you start making millions?
So one reason why I decided to learn Spanish, I did think ahead. I knew that Spanish is going to be always going to get me a job. And so I graduated college, and 2 weeks later, I actually moved to Colombia. Now, the way that I moved to Colombia, I was sick of being in the US, and I was trying to find a way for me to live out the US, but I was broke. I had no money in college. And so I was looking at programs. I was looking up to be doing what's it called, like the Peace Corps and things like that. And I found this one program that would bring you to Colombia and they'd house you for a year. And then you get like a little stipend. It was something like maybe $200 a month. And I thought to myself, and the program only cost $1,200. So I'm in this US, still in college, still broke. And I was like, okay, I think my refund check is $1,200. Let me do the math. How much is rent going to be? Oh, well, I would basically make back my money because they're giving me, I don't have to pay rent. And they're also giving me $200. So I was like, okay, I could. And so I found this program. I applied to the program. And 2 weeks after I graduated college, and I finished college in December, in January, I had moved to Colombia.
Wow. What year are we in?
This is 2013. Yeah, January 2013 when I moved to Colombia. And so I would say that I did have a job straight out of college because technically I was a volunteer English teacher, but they gave me housing and they gave me a little stipend and I was able to live off a little bit of refund check, to get me through the rest of it. But yeah, I had a job.
And you were out there seeing the world. Like, how many people can say that?
Yeah, living in Colombia. And at the time, Colombia was still a very kind of taboo place to go. It was still seen as very dangerous. And so I was able to take that, go from not having any teaching experience to having teaching experience, and then going from a volunteer position to then a private school position. So this is 2013. It was a lot easier if you're a native English speaker to kind of get into these private schools. And so basically from there, I ended up getting a real job at a private school teaching English. And once you're in a private school, they house you, they feed you, you get a decent salary. And so that kind of kickstarted, I guess, my adult responsible life, but still at 22.
Had you been to any other countries before Colombia? Or like you said, these family vacations and things? So this wasn't your first time leaving the country?
No, I studied abroad when I was a sophomore in Spain, and then I interned for 3 months in Ecuador when I was, I think, right before I was a senior. And so it wasn't the first time that I'd been out. I hadn't really traveled that much at that point. Maybe I'd gone to 2 countries before, but I think between Spain and interning in Ecuador, it made me go, yeah, I actually like it better outside the US. Let me figure out a way to do it. And so, yeah, that's why I was on a mission. I spent so many hours trying to find the best way that I could do it, but broke because I was still in college.
Right. Figuring it out. But also, like you said, expanding your horizon, your perspectives, learning new cultures, new things. And I mean, really actually like nailing down this language, because I feel like there's probably a certain amount you learned in school, but the way that a textbook teaches you versus the immersion, I know for me, has been unbelievable.
You know exactly how it is. The textbook can only get you so far.
Right. And then you learn for real. You land.
Right. When you think, oh yeah, I aced this test. No, when you get into it with people, I mean, literally, because sometimes you have to, yell at your landlords. You have to stand up for yourself and advocate for yourself at the grocery store. Then that's when you really learn, okay, it's the textbook.
Right.
It's
There's
only
no words for this. They ain't
useful,
teaching you
right?
this, but
They
I'm
didn't
about to learn today.
Exactly.
All right. So we're out of school. We're figuring it out. How are you feeling about money at this time frame? And how do you transition to kind of like the next phase of life from like, okay, this is okay, but I want to do this instead, or I want to earn this way instead?
I felt good about money because I actually was making a really good wage for Colombia. It was my first teaching job, but technically I was making a lot of money in comparison to the cost of living. And so I went from basically paycheck to paycheck all these years in college to now I'm not paycheck to paycheck. I'm in a different country. I'm living the life that you would maybe think you would live maybe in your 30s or 40s after you've gotten a certain amount of income because of my salary as a teacher in Colombia. And so I was not responsible.
Ah, you're like,
My
I was
first
earning
year.
well, but the way my spending was set up.
Yeah, it was. Now I understand, they say some people when they get to the NFL, they go bankrupt after because, it's there and you feel like it will always be there. And then I wasn't thinking about the future. I'm still 22 years old, 23. So I was still a child. And so I had a good time. But then in Colombia, a lot of the times they don't want to pay you in the summertime. And so my contract was from, I think, August to June or May. And so I had 2 months of just no paycheck.
And that's when it got real.
And that's when it got real. I was broke. I was doing so well, didn't save a penny because I'm 22, 23. Summertime comes, I'm broke. I go to the US. Just luckily, I'm at my mom's house. I'm there for a month. Come back to Colombia. I'm at a new job, better salary, better benefits. But they don't pay you in Colombia until a whole month after you work. You get paid once a month. And so I show up to Colombia, no money. Luckily, I'm able to get the bus from school that's provided to me. They feed you all day. And then I would come back home and I slept in a hostel actually for like the first 3 weeks of school because the hostel didn't collect money until the end of your stay. And so I'm going to like my nice job during the day and then coming back to the hostel. And then as soon as I got my first paycheck, I go, okay, this needs to be better.
Let me think about this because this was a rough couple months. Let me not live.
When I tell you one day, like I never had to ask my parents for money. Like I think maybe once in college. This is when I was like, Dad, I don't ask for much. I'm so dependent. Can I have $100? I just need to eat food. But knowing good and well, it was my fault. I was just being really irresponsible. But luckily, I was able to at least fall back so I could buy groceries. But after that first paycheck hit, also came my housing benefit too. And so they got me housing, they got me furniture, and I was good. It was like those 2 months never happened.
So you're saying you forgot about it all? You went back to the poor habits that you had. Tell the truth now. People want to know.
Listen, if you want to be real, you know what I would say? I've always lived life like a cat with 9 lives, where I could do things and then always just end up landing on my feet. And I feel like because I was able to get these good jobs so, right after college, and always be taken care of right after college and live well right after college, I think it made me have this like, oh, well, it's always going to be okay mentality, to be honest. And so it was like, yeah, I don't have to worry, that last year of irresponsibility, that's okay because look at me now. So I was like, okay, well, let me not be in the same predicament. I said, they're giving me money for housing. They're giving me furniture. I found a place that had extra rooms. And so I started renting it out to people. It's like, okay,
now we got a hustle going, right?
Let's hustle. Exactly. Let's hustle. Let's like take this and, because I'm not going to be like I was before. And it did teach me a lesson to be a little bit, more responsible, collecting rent and things like that, knowing that this could be gone tomorrow. And so that's kind of when I started to save a little bit more. And
Okay.
it wasn't, that was the last time that I was like broke.
Lessons that everybody learns about money. As I said, everybody makes mistakes here or there. That you can either learn from them or you can continue to make mistakes.
Right.
But it also sounds like you were alluding to, like, after these couple jobs, like, it also got a little bit real for a while. So close the gap from where we are now, like right after school, to present with the Royal that we have and what you're currently doing with, like, how do we bridge the gap and what happened kind of in the middle? Like, got real, then it got better, then it got real again, or what happened?
Yeah, so I would say from there it got better only because I continued being a teacher in Colombia, and I was able to, save and travel. That's how I think at the time I maybe traveled to maybe 5 countries at the time. Now I think I'm at over 50. And a lot of that was because I was able to learn those lessons about saving money and prioritizing what I wanted to prioritize. And at the time, I just wanted to travel the world. And so I would do as much as I could and save and, rent rooms out and try to hustle as much as I could because I didn't want a house. I wanted to travel. And I didn't want to do it in an extravagant way. I wanted to do it in the cheapest way. So it was backpacking. It was staying in hostels that are $6 a night. It was cooking for myself when I was on vacation. It was figuring out the cheapest way to do what I wanted to do because I also realized from my first year, I can't be extravagant. I can still have a good time though and still experience things, but not in the way that I wasn't able to afford it in that way. And I learned how to just do with what I had.
Okay. So you have now been to, I think it's 55 countries. You live in Medellín, Colombia. Well, I don't know if you live here or not, girl, but
I do.
how you refer to your current status. But
I do.
We are both abroad. And tell me a little bit about like why you chose to stay abroad after all this time. Like you said, you kind of got this introduction and made it sound like you chose Colombia still after all this time and 55 countries in between or here, there, and everywhere. Like you're in Colombia. Why?
Even to be, I could have answered your question, the first question, in a different way, but I just feel like there's so many zigzagging turns and it doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm. That's life.
And it's hard to just be like, so how did you get from point A to point B? It wasn't this way. It was like this.
Mm-hmm. Life is not a straight line with little check marks on it. Like we make plans and God laughs is the saying.
Exactly. And that's exactly what's happened. But I've been along for the ride. And what kind of made me end up in Medellin, I would say, if I want to do a long story short, because I was in Australia for 6 months. I went back to the States for a couple of years and was teaching there. It's one of those things that even when I was first thinking about coming to Colombia, there was this pull, if that makes sense. There was just, even though it was the most affordable program, there was another program that I was looking into, but it didn't have that same pull. And I just knew that I was meant to be here. And even when I left Colombia, I went to the States for 2 years. I decided to travel the world for a year. I'd saved up for it. Colombia was my first stop.
Where you already been is where I was like, we'll check this out one more time.
It was my first stop because I missed it. And I was going to go to China right after. No lie. And this is why I know I'm supposed to be here. The day that I went to go to my old job, the very same day that I went to visit, an English teacher had quit. So I show up not knowing. And they're like, what are you doing here? I was like, I'm here to just visit. They're like, you don't know about what's going on? They're like, well, you can work here if you want. And I thought, okay, I have already made all these plans for a year. I have the savings. I was like, well, I already know this place. I know the school. They're going to give me housing. They're going to give me food. I could just save up more money. So I decided, okay, well, instead of in September, going to China, I guess I'll be here for a whole year. So that's what I did. I stayed, didn't have to pay for rent, made more money, got a little side hustle with doing tutoring, basically like would use that for all my expenses and then saved everything. And so I was like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. But then I was like, okay, I don't like teaching anymore. That year made me realize, oh yeah, well, I left this job because I couldn't stand, I forgot I couldn't stand this place, the administration. And then I realized, actually, I don't like being a teacher anymore. I'm not the type of person I think could really work for people for forever. I definitely am my own type of, I need to be my own boss type person. And so I thought, I can't do teaching anymore. So I decided to kind of take a gap year, took my savings, went to Australia for 6 months, planned on going throughout Asia and just traveling. This is 2019, by the way. So then you can guess what happened with those other plans for 2020. Instead of being around the world, of course, grounded in the house, having to face myself, figuring out what I actually want to do. And so those times during COVID made me go, okay, you don't want to be a teacher, but you've always wanted to be a psychologist. So I decided to switch careers and pursue psychology. And so what made me come to Medellin, I would say, is I'd always wanted to come to Medellin. I used to live in Bogota, in another place that's a lot hotter. And because I could do class online and Medellin was open, I decided to come down here and then just loved it. That's really it. And so it was, I guess, the pursuit. I don't know. There's so many different things that had to happen for me to even get to Medellin.
Yeah. This is an amazing story. There's so much I didn't know about you, so I'm learning too. But there's a lot of people listening today, and like I said, they are just like excited to flee the country. They're thinking about fleeing the country. They're nervous about fleeing the country, but the flee the country is a real thing right now. It's become more than a conversation for various reasons for various people. And as two people that are living outside the country, I thought we could just give them a little bit of like background on what they need to be thinking about before they leave the country. Which one thing you mentioned already is like you went to school for Spanish. I did not. I have this like hodgepodge street Spanish that
you do well. She's being modest. She's
had
good.
some tutors, but I didn't have any formal education. And then I had the immersion. And so as you think about where you might want to flee the country, I think one of the first things you need to be thinking about is like what language is spoken in that country. And then the other piece of the puzzle that relates to that is like, well, you can't just show up and expect people to speak English, but you also can't just show up and expect their culture to kind of mold around yours. So before you leave the country, are you open to a different culture? Because most of us are leaving because we don't like the culture in America right now. And so therefore, you don't bring your American culture to the other country, you mold into or you mesh into the other country's culture. What do you think about that?
Oh, yeah, I think that's absolutely solid advice that we have to basically be malleable, amenable, and we need to not make where you are at like home. Otherwise, just stay home. And then I think it's a lot of the frustration comes from anybody that when they first move somewhere is that at first those things are really cool. The differences, oh, how funny that, people are 2-3 hours late to something. Ha. Or how funny is, X, Y, and Z in the culture. And then it gets annoying. And then you go, oh, man, I really wish it was just like back home. But then that's where most of the frustration comes if you start to just be more open and be even humbled by the different type of culture that you'll encounter. I think it'll make the process a lot easier. And for me, once I learned how to, if you can't beat them, join them. Once I decided to just be as Colombian as possible, that's when my quality of life and everything around started to go up.
Yeah.
Things weren't as annoying as they were before.
Because you, like you said, there was a pull, there was something that brought you here, and it probably was some of those differences. And to your point about the like the lateness and the like, it's a very don't worry, be happy kind of culture. Like it's super stressful for a type A financial planner personality to like immerse themselves. Even as a professional athlete, it was like if you're on time, you're late sort of thing. And people just show up whenever. And nobody is ever stressed about it. Like I'm the only one that's like, y'all not looking at this person just 30 minutes late. We've been sitting here waiting on them. Like but now I'm doing it in my brain and now I'm more prepared. Like I know, don't set up something for like, oh, this is going to be a 60-minute meeting. Don't set something right behind that 60-minute meeting. Like plan for that to be a 2-hour meeting because somebody's going to show up 30 minutes late. It's going to be an hour and a half. Then you're going to have traffic to get home. Like, it's just like, you can do 2 activities a day. That's it. Like,
Yes.
but it's also better, like you said, to not have my day jam packed with like meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting. So you said you got to kind of be malleable, to your point.
Yeah. Yes. And so it sounds like you learn, if you can't beat them, join them. And so have you noticed that, their way can be a lot better sometimes?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I was looking for a new way. Like I said, that was the thing for me. Like I said, various things made me leave America, but it was really like I need to shift the energy that is in my life. And I know that there's a lot of things that I'm doing that are toxic. So let me experience something different. Let me try a different perspective. And it has been awesome.
Yep. Just give in.
Right. Okay, so what about like healthcare, visa situations? Like, how are we doing this? Can you say a little bit about what you've experienced as it relates to like, because yeah, stuff happens, your body falls apart. Like, how do you manage that in a new place? And then,
Well, I would say, just backing up a little bit, one of the ways to also find a new place is to try to find a place that's already established with the community. I came to Colombia with a program, so they already had the things with healthcare and things like that already established. So when I came back here, outside of working visas and not with the school, and I was just here in Medellín on my own, and there was no communities like WhatsApp groups set up, I did find things like healthcare and getting tapped in really, really difficult. And so then us being able to create these communities, like the WhatsApp community, we have the Black in Medellín community, there's the Black women in Colombia community, for example. That's been really good to get resources. So to know the best English speaking doctors or the dentists and things like that, because before that, it was a lot of trial and error unless I was able to go to my school for help or whatever program I was in for help. And so that's what I would say. If you can find a place that already has something established, so that way you can just get tapped into the community. Second thing is, in Colombia, at least in Medellin, we have WhatsApp groups that are super, super helpful. So not just, for the Black community, but if you're a foodie or if you need medical care, there are also medical care groups. So to get tapped into that, to make sure that when you come down here, that you know the best clinics to come to, you have the best healthcare, you have the best international care, because those are things that you really have to keep in mind, because not every clinic is the same. Not everybody's going to treat you well because you're a foreigner. Money talks a lot of times, but you don't want to have to find that out the hard way.
absolutely. And you brought up WhatsApp quite a few times. I think one thing that we take for granted in America, or we don't really understand in America, is WhatsApp is a way of life in pretty much every other part of the world.
Yeah.
When I tell my friends, like, let's make a WhatsApp group, they roll their eyes. They're like, why are we doing this? Like, I don't want to download another app. But you literally can't survive without WhatsApp in most other parts of the world, not just Colombia.
Right.
Like, you make your doctor's appointments on WhatsApp. I sign my rental contract on WhatsApp. Like, it has a lot of functionality that we're not even aware of because we're not using it the same way in America. And quite frankly, sometimes it's way more efficient than some of the processes that we have in America.
Absolutely. Okay. Not having HIPAA in Colombia makes things a lot easier. Okay, you get all your results over WhatsApp.
Right. They do. They just text them to you. That is very true. All right. So what about, like you said, like visa drama? Because I know you had some recently. I'm getting ready to come up on the end of my visa on April the 8th, and I'm figuring out my next steps. But
Yeah.
what do you want to tell the people? Because one thing I also think we take for granted is that American passport.
Oh, yeah.
We basically just like book a flight and we go as long as we have a passport. You don't even think about like, what do I need to come here? And the rest of the world does not have those luxuries. And we may not always have those luxuries, like you said, in light of the way that things are going nowadays. But what do you need to be thinking about if you actually want to live in another place versus visit another place?
Okay, so absolutely the visa thing is real. Until I stopped working in, Colombian countries, I didn't realize how good I had it to just be able to be here for so many years. No, it's first you got to make sure that your American passport or whatever passport you have gives you a certain amount of time, if you can extend or not. And then if you can, I know it's a bigger thing now that people are trying to do, get a second passport, because that is actually going to be your key to living in different countries for extended amount of times, because what you can do is you can come in and out on different passports, and then like that resets your time. And so Lauren was talking about I had issues. Well, I've exhausted all the ways that I could get a visa. I've been doing tourist visas. I overstayed my visa. I had to pay a fine one time. The digital nomad visa is something that you can get in certain countries, and Colombia is one of them. There's quite a few countries that it can happen in. Those are easy to get because a lot of them have a very low income threshold. Colombia has a really low one. It's like $800 a month or something. So visas, like a digital nomad visa is an option, but I'm actually going for the second passport option right now. There's countries like Ghana that are allowing people to become citizens. I can get a passport from Jamaica by descent because of my grandmother. And so because of what you mentioned with all the uncertainty that's happening in the US right now, I'm banking on having two passports just in case, because during COVID for a time in 2020, the US passport was the most devalued passport because I think we can only go to, 20 countries at the time. It was like 20, 25 countries. That was it. And that was thanks to the president. So you just never know. So since then, I've been really on a mission to get people to think about getting dual citizenship if they can through descent. If you have Caribbean descent, you can try to look through that for that. There's countries like Benin and Ghana that are also opening up ways for people with African descent to get citizenship. And so, yeah, that's what I will say about the visa thing is to see, yes, one passport is one thing, but if you can't get another, or if you have yours already, look into that.
Right. I feel like that is the real hack for today, because so many people are just like, oh, my American passport. Like you said, they're not well traveled. They're trying to think about how to get out. And it's like you're going to expand your horizon drastically by leaving the country. But also, this passport may not be, like you said, all that it's cracked up to be for as long as we think it will be. And so you can't take it for granted. It's like, you're like, forget a visa, girl, get another passport. Which is also one of the coolest things about America. We are a melting pot of people, all different ethnicities, races, etc. And we've also like started to bury that for a lot of people. There are a lot of people who have like proud histories for this or that, but most people in America, I probably say, I don't know what percentage. I'm not going to throw a number out, but a lot of people qualify to have a passport in a place other than America because of the melting pot that we are. And at this point, like you said, we need to start thinking about America not being the number one or the principal place that we take pride in being a part of. Take pride in all your roots, all your culture, and make the most of those other passports.
Yes, exactly. Now more than ever, it's really good to have a backup because yes, we've seen it before. Just not even 5 years ago, or about five. Yeah, it was 5 years ago where our passport just became obsolete. So yeah, have a backup plan. But for sure, there's places, I believe, if you want to go, I think, across the pond to Europe, I believe Albania does things. I think you can get it's like 360-day visa for Americans to just be there if you want to try it out. I know Mexico does things like 6 months. We can be there for 6 months at a time. That's a really good amount of time to explore a place, to see if you want to, do that. In Colombia, you get 90 days, but then you can extend it to another 90 days. So that's a good 6 months. So that's a good enough time to see if you want to stay in a place or not and see what other type of visas that they have. So yeah, I would say just figure out, how much time you can take away to go explore another place. And if if it's going to be visa free or not.
Absolutely. Where are you now in life, in finances? Like you said, you're running a business. I opened the show by talking about your business, but explain to people a little bit about like what you've decided to do right now, and then we'll wrap up with a few like rapid fire questions.
Okay. So a couple of things. It's like a pizza with a lot of different ingredients, but when you put the different ingredients on them, it goes together, right? So so what I ended up doing was I started a business that focuses on basically Black women and travel so that we can have a space to be ourselves unapologetically. And so what I do in Colombia is expose people from the diaspora to Afro-Colombian culture, specifically Black women. And then also in the second business that I have started, it also is to get HBCU students and university students down to Colombia to also have experience with the Afro-Colombian culture. And so we were able to get a school down here last year. And the idea is to connect the diaspora and, connect with our cousins, connect with the things that we have lost culturally, see the connections between each of us, because there is so many things that unite us and that are the same that we have retained from, our roots. And so that's kind of what the businesses focus on. And it also ties into psychology because I want to become a psychologist, and I've been actively on research teams and writing papers and things like that regarding the well-being of just Black folks in general, specifically Black folks that move abroad as well. There's something about leaving the US that allows us to kind of find ourselves in a way that we never found ourselves before, because we get to have the lens of being in the US off of us. There's certain tropes and schemas and stereotypes that maybe don't exist in the same way when you travel abroad. And so when you get that taken off of you, you kind of get to see yourself for who you really are. That's kind of like why I do trips for Black women and do trips for, HBCU students, so that they can see themselves in the people around them, because also we're so much alike to the Afro-Colombian community, but also see themselves without that cloud that America has on us.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And just like I said, as getting to know you, like see your passion behind this work and know how meaningful it's going to be to the people that decide to become your clients. So if you're looking for a place to, maybe flee the country for the first time and do a retreat with Royal, like, hey, like that might be it for you.
Yeah, we do Medellín and Colombia and Cartagena.
Okay, I like it. I like it.
Cali coming soon.
Cali coming soon. All right, let's wrap up with a few, what I like to call the final sprint. So they're rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Just best answer you got. You got $20 in your pocket right now. What do you spend it on?
Rappy.
I'm going to jump down my list a little bit and say, what is your worst money habit?
Rappy. And for those who don't know what Rappy is, Lauryn, can you explain?
It's kind of like Uber Eats and Postmates and DoorDash. All in, like you can get anything you want on Rappy. You get your groceries on Rappy. You get takeout on Rappy. You get them to bring like 2 pills to your house if you got a headache on Rappy. Like it's next level compared to what we got in America, but also really bad because it's just like, anything else. You got fees. You paying for that stuff to show up at your house. You heard her say that was also her worst money habit. All right, let's switch it up. Best money habit.
My best money habit, I invest in the stock market.
Mm-hmm. Worst advice you've ever received?
Worst advice I've ever received, probably to go with the crowd. Lay low, go with the crowd.
All right, finish the sentence. That awkward financial moment when
you pay too much money to go see Beyonce.
Ooh. Mm-hmm. And it sets your whole budget off for the month. The number of people who've had that awkward financial moment.
Yes. It's worth it, though.
All right, final. She is not qualified to give financial advice. That's what I'm going to say.
I'm not even going to argue with that.
All right, final question. Can you share one thing with us that you would like to improve about your finances in the upcoming year?
I really do want to get better at saving.
What's the action item to help you execute on that?
Getting rid of Rappy. Yeah. If I cooked more and just walked down the street to the store to get more things, that will add up a lot.
Okay, we're going to put your information in the show notes, but go ahead and put your Instagram right now. Tell people how they can find you so they can hold you accountable. I give y'all permission to message, slide in her DMs and be like, how you doing with Rappy? How you doing? Less Rappy or no?
Okay, and I'll be honest. That's one thing I will do. I'll be honest. I'll tell you yes or no. Yup, she travels. That's YUPSHE travels. On Instagram, on TikTok, on all the things.
On all the things. And like I said, we'll put it in the show notes as well. Royal, thanks so much for coming on the show. This is your time to shine. I mean, you just gave us a little bit about, like you said, where to find you, but is there anything else you want to tell us about how we can support you and help you continue to grow?
I'm so happy to be here, Lauren. Thank you so much. Listen, I'm happy to have accountability partners for sure when it comes to not ordering Uber Eats or Rappi or whatever. So feel free to, yes, jump into my DMs with that. But also, if you feel like you want to leave the States, for real, and on a serious note, if you feel like you want to leave the States and have any questions about that, people are always jumping into my DMs and asking me. Sometimes I actually meet people that have seen my content and they decide to come to Medellín. And so that's always something that I love. So yeah, help me help you. Just jump into my DMs if you have any questions, really.
I love it. I love it. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Lauren.